Chapter 4. The next race did not go well for Anakin. Flying a pod racer owned by Watto, he was neck and neck with Sebulba when the cheating Doug flashed his pod thrusters at Anakin's cockpit, nearly smashing him into the area of the race course known as Meta Drop. Anakin survived, but he crashed Watto's pod, damaging both engines. Watto was furious, and Shmi made it clear to Anakin that she didn't want him to race anymore, even if Watto decided he wanted Anakin to compete again. A little more than a week after the crash, Anakin had his protocol droid's intelligence and communications processors up and running. Although the droid had no memory of how he arrived on Tatooine, he counted Jawa and Tusken among the 6 million languages he spoke. The droid uttered clipped sentences in a well-mannered voice, but for some reason didn't always know when to stop talking. He also worried a lot. Anakin named the droid C-3PO, choosing the number 3 because he considered the droid the third member of his family after his mother and himself. C-3PO was still without metal coverings and had only a single working eye, but when Watto instructed Anakin to take a speeder loaded with scrap metal and other goods to the Dune Sea to do some trading with the Jawas, Anakin decided to secretly bring the droid along for the 4 standard hours round trip. Anakin and C-3PO met the Jawas in the shadow of the sandcrawler beside Mochot Steep, a singular rock formation about halfway across the Dune Sea. C-3PO proved to be a capable translator by helping Anakin negotiate with the Jawas, who were sometimes known to barter damaged goods. When the training was done, Anakin had acquired 2 mechanic droids, 3 serviceable multi-purpose droids, and a damaged hyperdrive converter that needed only minor repairs. Heading back to Mos Espa, Anakin was guiding the droid-loaded speeder through the Zelric Draw, a shallow, wide-mouthed canyon near the edge of the Dune Sea, when he sighted something. It was a shadowy shape that seemed out of place at the base of the rocky canyon's walls. As Anakin veered toward the area that had attracted his attention, C-3PO became nervous and fixed his one working eye on his maker. "Master Anakin, whatever are you doing?" "Whatever are you doing?" C-3PO said with concern. "Mos Espa is down the canyon jaw, not through the side of the... Oh my! Is that what I think it is?" C-3PO had studied the shape too, and because he learned about the more dangerous life forms on Tatooine, he didn't like what he saw. "Master, there is every reason to turn right around." "I know," Anakin interrupted. "I just want to look." Anakin brought the speeder to a stop near the cliff wall. A pile of rocks rested below the wall, and under the rocks lay a motionless humanoid body with one leg pinned beneath a large boulder. The body wore a tan robe, leather gloves, and boots. It was sprawled face down, head turned to one side, allowing Anakin to see the cloth-wrapped head, its face concealed by goggles and a breath mask. A long, dual-handed blaster rifle lay about a meter away from one outstretched arm. Anakin had heard enough about Tusken Raiders to know what they looked like, but he'd never seen one up close before. From the speeder, Anakin surveyed the cliff's wall's gouged, broken surface. He easily imagined that the Tusken had been hiding somewhere above when the rocks that had supported him gave way, sending him crashing to the canyon floor. Anakin climbed out of the speeder for a closer look. C-3PO's skeletal form trembled. "Master Anakin, I don't think this is a good idea at all." As Anakin approached, the Tusken stirred, raising his head to look at Anakin, then lowered his head again. "He's still alive." From everything Anakin had heard about Tuskens, he knew it would be best to leave immediately. If he stuck around, more Tuskens might arrive. If he was late getting back to Mos Espa or failed to return with the droids and speeder, Watto would be furious. As C-3PO protested behind him, Anakin thought of his mother. He knew she'd be worried, but he wondered, would she tell me to get out of here too? What would she say if she were here? "3PO," he called to the nervous droid, "bring the other droids over here." It took the combined strength of the various droids and the weight of the speeder to rig a lever that could tilt the boulder enough so Anakin could pull the now unconscious Tusken free. Taking supplies from the speeder's medical kit, Anakin applied a quick steel splint to free the Tusken's injured leg, which was broken in several places. Tatooine's suns began to set. Anakin knew he'd never reach Mos Espa by nightfall, and he didn't want to risk traveling across the desert in the darkness. After doing his best to conceal the spear and the newly purchased droids under the lee of the cliff face, Anakin sat beside C-3PO. Illuminated by a small glow unit they'd removed from the speeder, they were watching the Tusken Raider when he awoke. The Tusken lay on the sand, staring at Anakin through the opaque lenses of his goggles, then slowly raised himself to sit upright, taking care not to shift his injured leg. Hello, Anakin said, hoping his voice sounded friendly. But Tusken did not respond. Are you thirsty? Again, no response. C-3PO leaned his one-eyed head closer to Anakin and said in a low voice, I don't think he likes us very much. But Tusken's head turned slightly. Anakin realized that Tusken had spotted his own blaster rifle, which Anakin had propped against some rocks beyond the Tusken's reach. Then the Tusken returned his gaze to Anakin. Several minutes later, the Tusken spoke. Anakin didn't understand the snarled words, so he turned to C-3PO. The droid translated, He wants to know what you're going to do with him, Master Anakin. Confused, Anakin looked back at the Tusken. Tell him I'm not going to do anything with him. I'm just trying to help him get well. The Tusken didn't reply, but Anakin sensed he was afraid. Because nearly everyone believed Tusken Raiders to be fearless, Anakin was surprised. Why is he afraid of me? I'm not afraid of him. Then Anakin thought with some surprise, I'm not afraid of anything. But as Anakin stared at the Tusken's masked face, he saw his own reflection in the lenses of the Tusken's goggles and shuddered slightly. He had heard that Tuskens never took off their masks or bared their flesh, and the thought of his entire body being so completely enveloped, sealed off so that he'd be unable to feel anything, not even the touch of my mother's hand, made Anakin suddenly realize a painful truth. Although he was never afraid for himself, he was sometimes very afraid for his mother. What if I were to lose her? How brave would I be then? Anakin continued watching the Tusken until he fell asleep. Anakin Skywalker had many dreams that night. In one dream, he was no longer 9 years old. He was a man, and not just any man, but a Jedi Knight with a lightsaber. He ran through the streets of Mos Espa, looking for the few slavers who had escaped him. His mission was to liberate all the slaves on Tatooine. For too long, slavers in the Outer Rim had believed themselves immune from the laws of the Galactic Republic. Anakin was going to change all that. He called out, Release the slaves now and no harm will come to you. In the buildings that lined the streets of Mos Espa, some tenants leaned out of their windows and cheered for Anakin. Even though he deactivated his lightsaber's blade, most of the slavers were scared by the sight of him and his weapon and surrendered when they saw him. Anakin gave them some credit for knowing better than to take on a Jedi. A shadow snaked across the curved exterior of a nearby building. By the angle of the shadow, Anakin quickly determined that it was cast by a humanoid alien from atop a neighboring building's roof. From above and behind, Anakin heard the click of a blaster's safety mechanism being switched off. He thought, Aha! A slaver who doesn't know better. Anakin's lightsaber ignited with a loud hum as he spun to look up at the roof, just in time to see the alien squeeze his blaster's trigger. Before the fired laser bolt could reach Anakin's chest, he swung hard with his lightsaber and smashed the bolt back at his attacker. The alien clutched at his shoulder and fell from the roof, landing with a loud thud on the sand-covered streets. The dust was still settling when Anakin heard a woman's voice calling his name. Anakin turned to see the woman. It was his mother, dressed in her rough work clothes. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber and said, I came back, Mom, like I promised. You're free. His mother smiled and opened her arms to Anakin. He ran to embrace her, but before he could reach her, she vanished. He was still clutching at the air where she'd been standing when he was suddenly surrounded by sand people. Anakin awoke with a start. Just as they had appeared in his dream, a group of sand people now encircled him, silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky. They carried blaster rifles and long gaffy sticks, double-edged axe-like weapons made from metal scavenged from wrecked or abandoned vehicles. Anakin was completely at their mercy. As he wondered what the sand people would do to him, Anakin heard a guttural muttering from nearby. Beyond the group that stood around him, more sand people were lifting and carrying away the Tusken that he'd rescued. The injured Tusken was the one who'd spoken, and his words caused the other Tuskens to slowly back away from Anakin. Within seconds, the Sand People were gone, leaving Anakin unharmed. Maybe they were grateful to me for helping their friend. Maybe the Tuskens aren't so awful after all. Master Anakin, they've gone! C-3PO cried as he stepped away from his position behind the speeder, where he'd been hiding. Oh, we're lucky to be alive! Thank goodness they didn't harm you! Anakin stood up and looked around. The speeder and the other droids were where he left them, but the injured Tusken's blaster rifle was gone. The only evidence of his encounter with the Sand People was the depleted contents of the speeder's medical kit and their footprints in the sand. It's almost like the whole thing never happened. As the twin suns began to rise and the stars faded from the brightening sky, Anakin decided it was time to head home. His return to Mos Espa went as Anakin expected. After he'd snuck C-3PO back to Slave Quarters Row, his worried mother had nearly smothered him in hugs. When he delivered the droids to Watto, the angry Tordarian nearly lost his voice after belling reprimands for several minutes. Watto calmed down a bit after seeing the quality of the droid that Anakin had obtained from the Jawas, but by the end of the day, nothing had really changed. Tatooine was still a harsh, lawless world, and Anakin was still a slave. The following day, however, something remarkable happened. That was the day a Naboo starship landed on Tatooine, and Anakin's life was forever changed.